Hi everybody, and welcome to the latest in the Teleware programme of webinars. Our discussion today is going to be around why Brexit will hurt productivity in financial services the most and the technologies that will prevent it. Don't worry, the irony of productivity webinar on a day like today when Britain is gripped by a heat wave and a fantastic run in the World Cup as well isn't lost on us. So I'll introduce myself. My name's Mark Elwood and I'm the Marketing Director here at Teleware. And today I'm joined by two expert panellists. First of all, we've got Andrew Fawcett, who's a regular panellist on these webinars. So you'll have heard Andrew before if you have joined any of our previous webinars. Andrew's a product manager here at Teleware. Hi, Andrew.
Hi there. Yes, I look after the mobile and recording portfolios at Teleware. Particularly interested in, obviously, some of the compliance tools in financial markets.
Wonderful, thanks Andrew. And we're joined by a really special guest today, Dr. Lucy Green, who's the CEO at Business Development Experts Lerato. Lucy's on the line, so hi Lucy.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, Lucy, and what Lerato do?
Yeah, of course. Lerato is a business development company. We've been trading for just over 13 years now, and we help businesses to accelerate their growth through better go-to-market activities in sales and marketing. And earlier this year I was very excited because I was lucky enough to be nominated as one of the UK's top 5 business development advisors from Enterprise Nation. So that was a lovely recognition for some of the work that we do.
Wonderful and really well deserved. So thanks for that, Lucy. And well, without further ado, I'm going to just dive straight in. So the title of today's webinar is a little bit provocative and deliberately so. So we wanted to put a spotlight on the issue of productivity and how there are a number of factors at play that have the potential to put further strain, not just on UK productivity, but also on productivity levels across Europe and beyond. So to frame the conversation, I just thought I'd do a little bit around some of the elements that are kind of impacting productivity and why productivity is struggling in UK and Europe since the financial crisis. So there are several factors that I believe that are affecting this. First of all is around the declining investment in technology that is needed to create a step change in productivity. In fact, CapEx has actually increased by only 5% since the crash. And when we compare that to the 1980s recession and the 10 years since that recession, this was more like 60%. So the reasons for that are unclear. It could be because businesses are more cautious now than they were in previous recessions, or it might be because the technology that has come into the market isn't seen by them as being something that will fundamentally improve productivity. And I think there's some real conflict in the market there. The second element is around how we measure productivity. It might be that some of the practices that were taking place in financial services in particular prior to the crash were creating an artificially high measure of productivity. And what we're actually seeing now is more of a correction rather than a fundamental decline in productivity. The third factor is the landscape is uncertain. We've got an unstable UK government. We've got an EU agenda that's been dominated by Brexit. We've got increasing regulation, and all of these are factors that could be impacting the return to significant productivity growth. And the fourth thing to mention is around what we mean by productivity. It's such a broad subject and it varies significantly from manufacturing through to services. And I think it's worth pointing out that today we are going to be focusing more on that service element and the communications that we believe impact and can help improve productivity within those service organisations. So today we're going to explore this in a bit more depth and we're going to share with you some of the insight and advice from our panellists. So to do that, first of all, I'm going to come to you, Lucy. So basically, what is going on with productivity? What do you think is making it struggle so much? And why do you think that the financial services sector in particular is being affected?
Okay, thanks, Mark. There are a few things that I think are holding productivity back. And you're absolutely right. Since 2008, the growth of productivity has collapsed in the UK. We are less productive than our main competitors, particularly France, Germany and America, by somewhere between 30 and 36 percentage points, so it's quite a lot. Even though we have seen some small improvements just very recently. And I think that one of the things is that there's evidence that productivity is related to infrastructure investment, which includes broadband and high performance connectivity, as well as what you might more typically expect in terms of road and rail infrastructure. And if you look at France, Germany's and America's infrastructures, they are better than the UK's, and I think we need some serious investment in the capacity and the performance of the connectivity across the UK. So that's one thing. You made a point a bit earlier about technology and the link to productivity. The Bank of England, an analyst called Andrew Haldane, wrote a paper. It's quite a heavy read, but it is readable. And in that paper, he makes connections between productivity and usage of technology. And certainly, in my experience, the businesses that I work with, where we're helping to accelerate growth, technology plays an important part in that and improving productivity. But one of the challenges, and I think one of the challenges for the financial services sector, is that some of this new technology that's coming along is very disruptive, and therefore it's potentially harder to adopt. We are looking at how do automatons fit into the market, into the workplace? How do we use technology to provide a better work experience? And I know we're going to come back to that a bit later, so I won't labour on that. But I think there is a number of factors. So primarily investment in infrastructure, usage of technology, and then the fact that some of this technology is quite difficult to adopt because it's so disruptive.
Yeah. Well, I can absolutely, I can understand that point entirely. So, are there any other factors that you think are holding back productivity growth?
Yes, I think that there is also a challenge for business leaders to know where they want to go. That productivity itself has changed in terms of, it used to be quite a fixed, hard metric that was sort of very clearly understood in the manufacturing sectors and the farming sectors, etc. But now we've got softer measurements of productivity in terms of customer service and can you use technology to save time doing processes that could be automated and therefore allow you more time to spend on effective or more effective working. And there is evidence that you can do that with technology. But a really interesting, just one more thing. A really interesting point from this research by the Bank of England, and there is a link associated with this webinar, is that they've shown that the British economy is characterised by a small number of high productivity firms. And these are the firms that are using technology to their advantage, and they're growing productivity annually by about 6%. But it's only about 1 in 100 companies in the UK that are doing this. So there's more that we need to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Lucy. So I'd like to take a little break here now, and I'd actually like to ask the audience a question. So the first of our poll questions is, Who listening today has currently or has previously put in place a productivity improvement strategy? So it's very simple answers there. It's a yes, no, or don't know. So we will leave that poll open for a couple of minutes and give you the chance to let us know where you are in terms of productivity strategies. So whilst we're letting people answer that question, Andrew, I'm going to come over to you for a second. So the point I made earlier about the technology available that may or may not be contributing to productivity, what do you think of the productivity communication technologies that you've come across that you think could help improve productivity?
Yeah, so all business, regardless, and particularly in financial services businesses, it's ultimately about two things: communication and collaboration. And at Teleware, our strategy really is based on the fact that we believe better communications are crucial to creating better businesses and more productive businesses. So unified communications technologies, and particularly cloud-delivered UC technologies, have obviously moved pretty much into the mainstream or in widespread adoption. But there has been a nervousness, I think, particularly in the financial sector, about adopting these, largely driven around some of the security concerns. And also, I think, probably even more significantly, I don't think these tools are being used to their best advantage. So mobile working has an enormous potential to impact productivity by reducing unnecessary travel and getting expert teams together regardless of their location. Things like AI technologies enable businesses to make faster decisions, better informed decisions, and ultimately better decisions. And then you've got the whole area of robotic process automation, where you're replacing often very mundane manual tasks with machine-aided or machine-controlled tasks. At Teleware, we're doing a lot of work with speech-to-text technologies, which can revolutionise the way that you can look at whole streams of conversation. There was a recent article which really pulled out the fact that with the latest strain of technologies, a lot of this has been focused on data and big data, and we've got big data coming out of our ears. But actually, some of the most valuable data in a business is actually embedded in those conversations that people have every day with colleagues and with customers. And at Teleware, what we're about is getting rich, actionable insight from those communications, particularly using some of the advanced recording techniques, mobile recording, and that sort of thing. So there's a whole raft of technologies which are available. I think one of the key challenges is knowing where to apply them, and also looking at the human factors around implementing them, because implementing the technology itself will often actually reduce productivity, I would argue, if it's not put in the right place with the right training and the right support for the people that are using it.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point.
Mark,
So,
sorry, Mark. Could I just come back on that, just to build on the point that Andrew made? There's also a very interesting piece of research from the Centre for Economic and Business Research in combination with the UK Work Foundation, where they measured that 75% of UK companies claim that implementing mobile working is challenging. But when they do implement it, they're seeing improvements in productivity, in the 65 to 70% bracket. So it does just go to show that there is a big step change that can be achieved when you get it right.
Yeah, no, I think particularly in the sort of communications area, we've now got such a number of ways of communicating with each other in business. Actually, that's created a bit of a melee. It's created a bit of confusion with people. People have their own preferred methods of communication, and almost sort of less is more. There's an argument that a lot of people actually spend their days mining their email boxes. I think we can all relate to that. And playing voicemail tag, playing email tag, and the ability to actually put sense behind these multiple modes of communication has been a big focus for us, trying to actually enable businesses and enable individuals to really use these tools effectively.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm just going to go back to the poll question that I asked. So who has currently or has previously put in place a productivity improvement strategy? So the results come in, and it looks like 2/3 of respondents are saying that they have got something in place, which I think is really encouraging. Do you have a view on that, Andrew?
Yeah, very encouraging, particularly sort of in the service industry. I'd be really interested to sort of an insight around how they're measuring the results of that, because as Lucy mentioned earlier, you've got the hard and the soft measures of productivity. How do you know you're doing the right thing? Are you taking sort of control groups and doing things with them? So it'd be really interesting from our perspective to understand what objectives and how businesses are measuring against those objectives.
Yeah.
And I think, Mark, that the financial services sector has really led the way in terms of productivity. They've been extremely good at sharing best practice. They communicate and collaborate as well as compete, and actually that mix has been demonstrated to improve productivity. And I think perhaps one of the challenges for the sector is how can they encourage other sectors and perhaps even some of the sectors they serve as customers to gain those productivity benefits by sharing best practice. I think that's an interesting challenge for the financial services sector.
Absolutely, and I think it's very interesting that the financial services sector is doing that, and it's doing it in a very regulated environment as well. So I think that's very interesting landscape that they're working in there. Okay, so I'm actually going to come on to a follow-up question to the audience now. So most people are working with a productivity strategy in place. What I'm interested to know is, has technology adoption resulted in significant improvements in productivity? So again, a very simple yes, no, or don't know response. So I'm just going to open up the poll. And whilst those responses are coming in, I'm going to move on to our next question. So Lucy, I know that employee engagement is a subject that's very close to your heart. How important do you think it is that businesses look at employee engagement if they're really serious about tackling stagnant in productivity?
I think it's critical, and actually there's evidence that this year that businesses are putting employee engagement, effective employee engagement, on their must-have lists. So, and the reasons are really important actually. First of all, we are living in a world of skill shortages. So for the past 2 years, 6 in 10 UK businesses have been regularly calling up skill shortages, particularly in technology and cybersecurity workers, where competition for these skills is across a level playing field across the globe, because everything these days is web enabled, and the younger people coming through the workforce, the millennials, they would actually a third of younger workers would choose mobile working and better employee engagement over a pay rise. So that's a real driving force for businesses to take employee engagement seriously. And I think just building on that, there is again evidence, and when I'm talking about, I'm going to take a slight segue into mobile enabled workforces, because that is such a a fundamental component of your employee engagement. You know, a worker wants to be able to bring their own device to work, or to be able to choose their own device at work, and to be able to use that device for work and for their own personal use. And so that's a challenge on lots of fronts, but when you do it, what you get are hyper-productive workforces, and what I mean by that are workers that are saving more than 2 hours a week and using that time to better effect at work, which has a fantastic knock-on effect on productivity, and that providing that seamless experience on a device actually is the fundamental component of delivering a smooth technology experience for an employee, which is critical to them in terms of who they're going to choose to work with. The kind of technology that you offer a worker is going to be, and actually is already, a fundamental component of attracting and keeping the right staff. So for the UK to remain competitive, for the financial services sector to become more competitive, they have to differentiate their employee engagement, and technology is at the heart of that.
Yeah, I agree entirely there, Lucy, and I think just to sort of add to that, you've got this move that it's only really affected a small number of sectors so far. But I think you will see an increasing move of all industries towards the sort of gig economy piece, where people are actually working for multiple employees, actually splitting the time and selling their skills effectively to multiple employers. And I think from an employer standpoint, they need to really think deeply about the technology they're going to need to support that. Because the skilled people working in gig mode, if I can call it that, are going to have enormous demands on companies' infrastructure, enormous requirements to actually use their own devices, and in many cases bring their own devices. And the underlying infrastructure of many businesses and the security concerns are going to really put the brakes on that unless we really rethink the notion of the workplace.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too. And so I'm going to come on to the results from the second poll question. So has technology adoption resulted in significant improvements in productivity for you? Interestingly, we've got 70% of respondents saying that yes, which I think is particularly high and is encouraging to see. 11% saying no, and 17% saying that they don't know. For me personally, I'm surprised that the don't know isn't higher, because I think that there can be some issues around measuring productivity around the technologies. But Lucy, do you have a view on any of those results that have come through?
Well, I think it's very encouraging. I think that hopefully those organisations have got the right technology platforms in place that go from the back office all the way through to the actual end user, be that an employee or a customer, and have joined all the dots. I came across, I did want to share this because I think listeners will find it helpful. There was a product that the UK set up a productivity committee chaired by Charlie Mayfield from John Lewis called Be the Biz, and they've developed an app which you can use on your phone or just on the internet, and it's got it helps you measure your productivity against your peer group across a various range of factors. And I think that if you've seen significant improvements in productivity, actually a look at that site might help you take the next step forward. And if you haven't or you don't know, then it's an absolute must go and visit. And again, there is a link to that assessment tool on the associated with the webinar.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so it's worth reiterating that the links that Lucy has referred to in the presentation are all on the links on the page, so you can access them after the webinar has finished. Okay, wonderful. So continuing this theme of asking you, the audience, some questions, I've got one final question that I'd like to put to you. So bearing in mind that you've kind of told us whether or not you've got a strategy in place and whether you've seen any kind of productivity improvements as a result of technology, the third and final question is, how important is it for your business to improve productivity? So where does it sit in your priorities? So ranging from it being our number one priority, it's something that we're looking to address, it's one of many things that we're looking to address, or there are a number of things that we've got to do first, or it's not even on our radar. So I'm going to open that poll up for you to answer. And whilst you're doing that, I'm going to come on to my next question. So so I'm going to go back, Lucy, actually, to some of the points you were talking about with employee engagements and productivity. And I'm just wondering, do you see anybody doing this well? Is it, that could be across an industry or it could be a particular organisation. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to call out the financial services sector again. I think, they're recognised as a centre of excellence, worldwide, and that's come from innovative use of technology in what is really a very hyper-competitive environment. And I think that anything that the financial services sector can do to help the rest of the country would be great. And I think then there's some really interesting companies, that some of these that are in the sort of top, we're growing our productivity, sort of 6%, etc. And one of those, I'll call out two. One is Deliveroo and the other is Just Eat. Now they're not financial services organisations, but I think there are some interesting learnings that you can make from them, because although both of those companies deal in basically in feeding people, so you could put them in almost under the catering sector, they don't actually have any food preparation or cooking capabilities. It's all about logistics. It's all about getting things from A to B in a very easy way, and doing it extremely efficiently. And the thing, I think, the reason I've called both of those companies out is they are absolutely obsessed with getting world-class process. So everything they do, from all of their communications processes to ordering, to fulfillment, to delivery, to every part of that chain, they strive for world-class productivity. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they're doing so well. And if I may, Mark, if we've got time, I'd just like to read a couple of sentences from this Bank of England report that was done by Andrew Haldane, because I think he makes a very good point that we could all learn from. So here goes. He says that if all companies are divided into 4 groups or quartiles, your standard 2 by 2, according to their productivity levels, Haldane has calculated that if each group or quartile became as productive as the group or quartile just above them, then aggregate British productivity would rise by 13%, and that the nation as a whole would become 13% richer. And I think, that's quite an extraordinary prediction. But it's you look at the integrity of the analysis, and it's very plausible.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful, isn't it? And it's coming from a very reputable source. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Not easy to achieve, but interesting. Andrew, I want to come to you now for a second. So obviously looking at this from a Teleware perspective, without breaking any confidentiality, but what types of customers do you see that we work with who are getting this right?
Well, firstly, in our business, we come across a very sort of wide range of organisations with very, very different approaches. Our core products are helping businesses support record keeping, particularly recording of communications in all its forms. And you see really the hugest spectrum from, for instance, when the regulation comes in, the MiFID regulation, we are seeing organisations still taking the approach of, oh, we'll just ban the use of mobiles. And that will, if you like, make the problem go away. Now, the impact of that on the individual employee and their ability to do the job and their ability to do the job productively is enormous. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got a number of enlightened organisations, I would say, who are really embracing this, and they're actually saying, look, you've got the technologies there. If they're properly implemented with the proper training and the proper monitoring in place, then there's no reason why you shouldn't work compliantly in a mobile environment with the proper checks and balances and reporting in place. And we have a whole range of solutions which help to support that, ranging from SIM-based to app-based mobile recording. And the more enlightened businesses are actually taking it one stage further. So once you begin to record this hidden resource of data, let's call it, that sits there in voice, you can start doing some really interesting things. So starting out from the compliance world, using speech-to-text technologies, you can begin to do, if you like, machine-aided or AI-aided compliance activity. So rather than having a team of 20 people listening back to recordings, you can actually use the AI technologies to use things like phrase spotting, to use things like sentiment and tonal analysis, to begin to look at how that can help the compliance process, take out some of the, if you like, drudgery work from there, so that compliance professionals can start to actually concentrate on building a better compliance environment within a business. And the other area is in that we're seeing is in sort of automated skills-based routing. So the ability to sort of shorten the length of a conversation with a customer by getting them to the expertise within your business very quickly. And again, at the very simple level, that involves things like IVR technologies. But by understanding more about your customer, understanding the past conversations that you've had with that customer, you can deal with them far quicker, far more effectively, and ultimately give a better customer experience, and also reduce the drain on your own resources through calls being misrouted or mishandled. So we've seen some great examples of that, I must say, in terms of some of the more enlightened businesses that we're working with. Beginning to put these things in place, I think it's not an event, it's a process. You're seeing businesses look across the whole operations and picking out those areas where potentially some of this new exciting stuff can have a real impact.
Okay, and so just to pick up on one of your points there, was around the compliance piece. So are you saying that enables the people doing the compliance work to do that better and more productively, or was it around that at an organisation level that actually is going to help them to just generally be more compliant more easily?
Well, I think by taking out, particularly the record keeping requirements that have now come in place are very, very significant, probably an increase of at least an order of magnitude in the amount of data that needs to be kept by a typical business in the finance sector. Then physically, I think we've reached capacity in terms of our ability to manually process that information. Yeah. So I think there's an argument that you have no choice but to begin to use these technologies, unless you want to employ 3 compliance people for every member of staff within your business, we are getting to the point where you need to store 5 to 7 years worth of data. A lot of that data is very unstructured voice data. The technology almost is a given that you're going to have to begin to use this to proactively bring your to achieve and to demonstrate compliance. And at Teleware, we're really about reducing the cost of compliance, the cost both in physical terms to your business, but also the opportunity to make compliance better. And one other thing I'd just go back on is that we are finding a number of businesses, I would say they're in the minority at the moment, who are actually saying now we've got this resource of all of these conversations, what can we do with that? It's a really, really rich seam of very rich information about your interactions with your customers and your ability to actually bring real actionable insight out of that is hugely exciting. So what's been done as a reaction to a regulatory requirement is often opening up conversations within businesses that are really exciting around having stored all of this information. Actually, there's some really interesting insights we can get into the way that we're working with our customers.
Wonderful. Okay, right, so I need to move on quite quickly. So just to go back to the final poll question that I asked, how important is it for your business to improve productivity? The answers are in. 43% of people saying it is important, but it's one of many things that we're doing, so the middle of the answers there, which doesn't surprise me because I think there's a lot of pressure on a lot of businesses to do a lot of things. So productivity being one of those, I think, that doesn't surprise me at all. 25% of answers said that it's a number one priority, which I think is very encouraging from a productivity perspective, and only 6% are saying it's not on their radar at all. So I think again some quite interesting results that are coming out there. We've not got time to delve further into that right now because I do want to move on to the next question, which is. Right, okay, if I am a business owner today and I'm looking to improve productivity within my organisation, what are the three things that I should be doing right now that are going to have an immediate impact? So Lucy, I'm going to come to you first of all on that one.
Okay, so given the results of the poll, I'm going to say that the number one thing I think is to look at the importance of productivity across the many things that you need to address. Because we talked about Brexit. It's possible that Brexit could increase the cost of trading, and therefore productivity improvements will become even more essential. So that's my first point. My second is that to look at the processes that you could streamline using technology, and in particular, the big wins are in communications technologies, collaboration technologies, and automation technologies, and then understand what employee experience you are offering with technology in particular, and determine how you can make it world class. So think about, I talked about companies that were obsessed with world class logistics processes. To get and to be able to attract and keep the right skills, the skills that you're going to need, we need to be offering world class employee experiences to get to the sort of top performer level who are seeing such fast and rapid growth.
Excellent. And Andrew, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, just sort of very quickly, I think something that really is a hobby horse of mine is that many businesses spend on technology but don't spend on implementing it effectively. And I'd go as far to say that the businesses that have implemented technology successfully, for every pound they've spent on the actual technology, they've spent another pound on implementing it successfully. And making sure that the individual is empowered, understands, is able to use that. And that goes beyond training. It goes right the way into choosing the right communication mechanisms, choosing the tools, making sure that they're using the tools properly. Secondly, leading on from that, take the human factors into account. Remember, individuals have preferred methods of communication, and the one-size-fits-all approach often you will find just isn't appropriate for a number of individuals and a number of businesses. And then finally, remember that productivity in a services environment can be as much about the soft measures as the hard measures. And so before you begin any productivity exercise within your business, have a really clear and agreed consensus about the desired outcomes.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Right, they were all my questions for today. We have had a couple of questions that have come in from the audience, so I'm going to really quickly come to you with one of these questions that we've got, so we've just got time for one. So should I be looking at BYOD or CYOD in my organisation? Andrew, I'm going to come to you on that one, if that's all right.
I mean, for those that don't know, bring your own device, choose your own device. Increasingly, a lot of the legislation sort of frowns upon individual supplied devices as opposed to company supplied devices, but we're talking to some very, very large financial institutions who are doing two things. One thing is that looking at getting rid of desk phones entirely, and another area that you're seeing is that they actually think that bring your own device can be put into place in a compliant way with the appropriate measures in place. So I think certainly my view there is that bring your own device and choose your own device can have very, very significant benefits to a business, needs to be put in carefully, needs to be thought about, and again needs to be have the right processes in place to ensure things like security, separation of personal and business data are met.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, right. So I'm just going to play back what I've heard today, and hopefully these are some of the key elements. So first of all, high performance connectivity is absolutely crucial. So it's not just what the technology is, but it's how we actually deliver that technology and the performance of it. The disruptive element of technology is potentially much more difficult to adopt, which could be impacting productivity levels. Mobile working is an important aspect of any productivity strategy, so enabling employees to work however, whenever, wherever they want to. It can have a significant improvement on productivity, but also creating engaged employees as well. So the right technology and that being able to be used and being desired by potential employees helps with the recruitment of and the retention of a really highly productive workforce. After Brexit, we're anticipating that productivity is going to become even more important as we kind of set off on our own path. And it's not just the technology, but it's how you use the technology, it's how you implement it, how you train your staff, and how they go on to adopt it in their everyday working practices. So some of the key elements that I've taken out of that. Is that kind of sum things up for you, Lucy, and for you, Andrew?
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, I think, hit the nail on the head there.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you both. I think it's been a fantastic conversation today, and hopefully you, the audience, have got some value out of today's session. All of the links that Lucy referred to earlier are available on the Bright Talk page, so you can access them there as well. And then before we go, I'd just like to make everybody aware of the latest white paper that we produced, Information Recall, The Secret Weapon You Didn't Know You Needed. It's a great read. It talks about how it's difficult for employees to recall all of the information that we've got at our, that we encounter every single day, and what businesses can do about that to help improve their productivity. So thank you for taking part today, Lucy and Andrew. Before we leave, I'd just like to give a little shout out to Lerato. So if anybody's interested in looking at more information about Lerato, you can find them at lerato.co.uk. That's larato.co.uk. Thank you to everybody who responded to the poll questions. That's been really valuable. And keep an eye out for the next webinar. We're looking to have the next one in September. So keep an eye out for on the Teleware Bright Talk page. Thank you very much and goodbye.